Welcome guys, I'll jump right into it. Let's go through a couple of useful geometry nodes tools that I use in my concept art workflows. So this will take you through some procedural rails and walls to start with, and we'll go from there. So first off, we've just got a line originating from the origin here. I'm just going to hit this drop down and press G for geonodes. We'll go new. The first thing I want to create is just a mesh line that turns into a basic rail. So starting from the basics and working my way up. So in the geonodes panel, type in mesh to curve, run a curve to mesh, curve circle for the profile, and we can set our resolution to something performant, bring our radius down. So at the moment I've got this, and the first fix I'd like to run is, you'll notice there's slight pinching on the corners here, a slight taper. So I'm just going to run a fillet curve before the curve to mesh. So to poly, and we'll just pull the radius down, something like that. And great, this is also our way to make a procedural pipe, where if I duplicate this, come on now, I can actually expose the radius value, and it'll show up in the geonodes modifier. And I can just tweak the radius, also tweak the fillet radius as well on a per object basis, as you can see. So this is leveraging, you can see by the number 3 here, it's leveraging the same geonode setup, but because I've dragged those values into the modifier here, I can tweak each individual one separately. So see what happens when I disconnect these. Since they're all the same in here now, all these are the same. So let's just say this is the rail, procedural rail that I'm making here. So what I want to do is repeat that circle. So I'll run a transform geometry, and then I'll hold Control Shift and drag my middle mouse button to join geometry. I'm going to fix up this curve into the right socket, fix up this into the right socket. So this is actually running 2 circles now, so if I offset this, you'll see that. It means I can still control the resolution, but it's duplicating this in a different position. And now what I can do is run that wherever I like, and it's got 2. So we're getting there already. I think for now what I'd like to do is just go up, across, down, and just treat this as my basic rail. This is level 1. And if I want to make that longer, I can just run an array modifier beforehand, duplicate that around, rotate it. So pretty basic, but this would be complexity level 1 probably. So let's take this, remove the array and put it to the side. Let's call it rail. The second level, I'm just going to hit this little 2 to make this geonodes unique. I'm just going to hit N, go to group and remove these because I don't need them anymore. So for level 2, what I'd like to do is for a rail to appear anywhere I put this. And a good basic way to do that is just to instance along that mesh line that I'm drawing. So let's get rid of this a bit. And let's just run an instance on points. Call this new setup rail array 1. I'm going to pin this so that when I click on a different object, it stays in the screen, and then I can just drag that straight in, plug this into the instance, and then you'll see here, wherever I have a point, it will spawn a rail. So, what if I want this arrayed in a different fashion? I could run a mesh to curve, and then I could run a resample curve. So at the moment, it's going to place whatever I put in here as the total count. Evaluated will just be on the vertices, but length will be a constant length set to whatever I choose. So that one's level 2. So I'll just set a length that looks good. It's great. And this is still using this geonode setup here, so I'm just going to align those so it looks nice. So something like that. I'd call this my rail level 2. And this one is similar to the last one, but it's going to give me a bit more control. Probably as an added bonus for control. What I might do is just set a align rotation to vector and plug in a normal into the vector. Select Y, You know what, I might do that. Seems like the most stable. And then I'm just going to come back here, rotate 90 and apply rotation. There we go. So obviously with this one, for any curved stuff, you want to be quite sparing with how you use it. But I can compensate for some of this by running a fillet curve just to add that bend. And then I could run another resample. In fact, let's just move the resample back here so I have a consistent length. So you can kind of use that as a bendy one, but as you can see, it's not the greatest results. So that's why. Let's go on to method number 3. So let's just merge everything down, extrude that point. We've got our line. So for this one, I'm going to copy this if I can. In fact, I'm just going to duplicate this, and we'll go rail array 3. Keep everything. So there's our line. We'll just hook this back up. So now we have those two from before. So before we were having the issue where we wanted to do something like this, but we're getting mixed results. So that's kind of what I want to solve for using a curve. So what I can do here is turn wireframe on so you can see I'm filling in the curve, so getting that nice gradual curve on the horizontal rail. And then for the vertical sections, I went to instance on points. So I'm going to drag this up here. I'll use the same one here, instance on points, and let's just use a cylinder for now. Control Shift, middle click and drag. And let's run a resample curve, just so we have some control over the frequency of those cylinders. Okay, let's bring our radius down and depth. So the first thing I want to fix is where this is actually spawning from. And for that I'll need a set position. Just run that in here. And let's go. So you can see I'm offsetting here. This is fine. And you can see that the offset is half of the depth, which is fine unless I want to change this again. So to fix for that, let's just go depth of 3. Then I want to get that to 1.5. So I'll just grab a math node, divide by 2, combine XYZ, plug this back in here, and what I want to preserve is, or what I want to affect is only the Z. Plug that back in there. So now when I change the depth, it's always going to spawn from the bottom of that curve, which is exactly what I want. So tweak the radius again. That's great. And we'll go the frequency. You know what, I might run another transform before this, just to raise it up slightly. One more time. And this is railing number 3. So again, with any of these, just get rid of these again. I can pull anything into the group input. So let's say I wanted to expose the, let's go 1 multiplied by 1. So let's plug that in over here instead. And what that allows me to do is to take this and plug it in there. If I want to change the name, I can just double click on this and I'll go vertical height, and you'll see it pop up there. Now I can edit that. So again, I can do that for any of these. So I might want to go vertical radius as well. Cool. That's railing number 3. This one's quite versatile. Also kind of works for verticals, but can get a little bit fiddly in places like this. Now, one thing to remember also is that we don't have to do everything parametrically. We're artists at the end of the day, so what we can start to do is swap these out with custom meshes. So let's do a quick example. Let's say I have some kind of pole here, or whatever. It's kind of janky low poly pole. I can go in here, pin this. What was I using? A cylinder. So instead of using that, I'm just going to grab my pole with this pinned, drag it in, and plug that into the instance slot. And there we go. So let me just, number 3. I'm just going to plug this old one in here. Call this 4. Use the instance slot. So the nice thing about this is I can go into here in edit mode and edit this stuff manually. I can also add some subtle variation to it. So let me show you that real quick. Let's say I wanted to add some rotation rotate instances. There we go. If I drag out from here and just type in random, it's going to give me a random vector rotation. I'll just reset all of these, and then I can set the min and max XYZ values. So a little bit of rotation on Z, that way and that way. Same for this, and same for that. I'll pump the Z all the way up, just for some extra randomness. So this is good for more organic fences. I can do the same for scale instances. Same again, scale, random value. We'll keep these all on 1 for default. And let's say I wanted some variation in the height. I could do that. And the width. So again, jumping back in here, I can still expose anything I want or edit the frequency of when they spawn whenever I want. And for something like this, what I would probably do is make another set of instances for the vertical sections. But for now, let's just pretend this is a wire fence. I'm just going to transform one more of those. We'll call that our wire fence. Sure. I'm going to get rid of the fillet on those wires. Maybe on everything. Cool. So what else can we use tools like this for? Well, it's not just for Rails. It's literally for anything you can possibly think of. So one thing I do like to use it for is castle walls. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm just going to pull in a curved circle here. We're going to use the same principles we just talked about, but to create something completely different. So we're in geometry nodes. I'm just going to hit new, castle wall circle. Now we've already got a curve, so we just go straight to curve to mesh and whack in a quadrilateral curve. And this is going to be my castle wall. So there's a few things I want to fix. I'm just going to search for smooth by angle and plot that at the end. And that's going to fix our shading issues. I am going to do the same thing we did before, where we go, is it set position? Yep, we use the Y. So let's say our height is 2. We want to offset by 1 or -1 so that it's on the ground. I think I might want to just do this, treat this as the top of my castle wall. So I'm just going to do that. And that'll just mean that if we do the same thing, we've got a height of 2. I'm going to divide this by 2. Make sure we're sampling only the Z value since we're doing height. Okay, something's not adding up. Maybe I multiply by 0.5 position, offset. Okay, what about transform? Oh, I think I need to flip it. Alright, let's see exactly what's happening to start with. Just double check my other test file here. So it's set position. It's definitely offset. So we've got that so far. Divide by 2. Sample only the Z. Ah, I think it might be the Y. Problem solved. Now I can tweak the height just fine. That's our castle walls. And now for the crenellations, which are those little bumps on there. So same as before. Run an instance on points. Join those together. Let's just whack a cube in here for now. Just going to borrow this set position. Or am I? Offset. Okay. I might need to align the rotation first. Yeah. Does that work? Yes. Right, so the rotation is aligned to the curve now. We'll run a resample, set the length, same as before, and then we've got our crenellations. Now you'll notice with bigger and bigger castle walls, we start to get these flat sections here. So if you want, you can run a resample before this as well. Actually, you'll really start to notice some of the angles in the curve here. So probably what is better to do is run a subdivide curve. Let me just double check myself there. Seems smooth enough. Yeah. And then if I want to make sure it's not too crazy, I can do another resample. Set that back to length. And then it'll just dynamically scale. Ta-da! So this castle wall, here's my thickness. And I'll probably want to do a similar thing with the thickness as well. Let's just plug that straight into the X. Yep. Beautiful. Set those to the right length. And now castle wall is happening on the corners. Alright, we've got some stuff to set up. The other nice thing about this group input is I can whack it over here. It'll work just fine. So, we've got this one here is wall height. This one here, wall thickness. Booyah. Length. We'll go crenellation frequency. And there we go, there's our castle wall. Now that we have this set up, we can do things like duplicate it, scale it in, and because these are exposed, I can change that and that. I can even scale it in object mode to make some changes as well, as you can see. Another handy side effect. And now comes the fun part where, again, instead of parametric stuff, we can do another one here, make it unique. Castle wall circle 2. Instead of a cube, we could bring in an object or even a collection, which let's take a look at that now. Crenellation fancy. So let's just make something quick and dirty here. You'll have to excuse me, I'm using a few add-ons to achieve some of this. Sure. Got to remember to use multiple objects since we're doing a collection. It's very ugly, but it's all in there. So same thing applies. I've got this pinned already, so if I get the collection and drag it in, use that as the instance. Okay, so you'll see it's arraying that, but the position is off. That's because technically this stuff all needs to be on the center for it to work there. If you don't want to move it like that, an easy fix is to actually just drag the collection into the viewport and then go object, set origin to geometry. So now this collection instance origin is centered on the middle of the geometry. So I can delete that now and it will retain that information. Just keep in mind that anytime you move this, you'll just have to do that again. And I have that set up to a shortcut. So that's why I'm able to do it so quick. Cool, so same thing applies. Let's grab this. And the nice thing about this is you can, let's just pull this in so I can see it. So I can edit this, make it exactly how I like it. And already you can see just adding that complexity through repetition. Super useful. So you can really go to town and experiment with a lot of quite simple details here and arrive at something complex pretty quickly. So using the same logic, there's one other tool I want to show you that uses similar principles, and that is my favorite scattering method for organic stuff. So let's just say I had a few rocks of different sizes and I had an environment over here. I wanted to scatter them on. It's fine. I could just make a geonode setup on this plane here, but I'd be bound to that plane. So I wouldn't be able to scatter rocks up on the buildings, or if I had another environment mesh I wanted to scatter them on. So one of my favorite methods of scattering around a scene, especially with rocks or plants, slime, things like that, is bringing in a curve. And let's do a new geonodes, go to curve, scatter. Just add these to a rocks collection, and we're pretty much gonna rinse, repeat the same thing. So instance on points, I'm gonna pin that, bring in my rocks instance, reset and pick instance, which on every point is just gonna instance something different in that collection if you haven't used this before. And now we're gonna do the same stuff we were doing before. Resample curve, and make it by length. I'm not sure why it's not cycling. Oh, it is. Never mind. Okay. So let's delete all of these, and pretty much we're almost ready to go. In the curve edit mode, I just want to select this draw tool, and instead of cursor, I'll set it to surface. And then I'll basically be drawing a curve on any surface. So across multiple meshes. And that's why this is my favorite method of scattering. So what I might do is Just grab these, make them smaller, just so we can get a better sense of how I'd use this in practice. So the other nice thing about this is, at the moment, we can see that it's quite linear, not very random. So, we can add some randomness. Same as before. Let's reset everything on 0. Okay, random translation. Random scale. The other really nice thing I love about using curves specifically is point radius. I think that's it. There we go. So if I run an output into the scale, I click this little button here and set it to point radius. When I select any of these points and hit Alt-S, I can scale those points, and this allows me to make quite a bit of variation in the scale after the fact. And also remember that I can move any of these and tweak their position to something I like. So that's a big reason why I like this method in particular for scattering, because it gives me a lot of artistic control. Again, I can go back into draw, say I want some bigger ones. If I like a certain configuration, I can always separate it. If I want to convert that to mesh, I've just got to make sure I whack a realize instances there. Now I can convert to mesh, and there we are. So that's it, folks. That's a couple of useful tools that I've been enjoying using when I'm making my own environments. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. I'll see you next time.